All right, so I am recording now. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Oh, we're doing the special segments part of chapter 5. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 special segments. One of them you already know. Is everybody in their notes where it says special segments? We're just doing 2 sides today, a little bit less notes, but a little slower, and maybe have some time for homework. So the first special segment is the mid segment. Do you guys remember when I taught you the mid segment back on Tuesday? Yeah, what is the mid segment made up of? 2 midpoints. Good. Remember, I made such a big deal about mid segment, midpoints, mid segment, midpoints, mid segment, midpoints. It's end points. The end points of a mid segment are the midpoints. The midpoints of the sides of a triangle. And then remind me this, we learned 2 properties of it. Mid segments are blank to the sides of the triangle that they don't intersect. Parallel, very good. And the length of the mid segment is blank as long as the side it doesn't intersect. The other way around. Half, good. They are parallel to the third side, and the mid segment is half the length of the third side, or you can think that the third side is double the mid segment. All right, so I'm going to draw those over here. So I'm going to draw some little midpoints. I'm going to show that I know that they're midpoints by putting little congruent marks on them. One on every side. You could only have 1 on your picture, but there's maximum 3 on the each triangle. And then the properties we just talked about. These sides are parallel. And this mid segment is like, if we say that's X, then the side opposite it is 2 times X, twice it. Okay. And what I'm going to write on the outside, and this will make sense once we do a couple more special segments, I'm going to write like out here in the margin, I'm going to write 2 midpoints. So each of these special segments are made up of 2 special things. And in this case, they're both midpoints. So I've got 2 midpoints. That's what makes the mid segment special. All right, everyone okay with that? Okay, the next one is an angle bisector. Do you remember what a bisector is?
Something bisects 2 equal parts.
Yes, it cuts it into 2 equal pieces. Cuts into 2 congruent parts or pieces. So an angle bisector bisects an angle. It cuts an angle into 2 congruent parts. So when I draw it, it says we're going to sketch a bisector of angle A in the triangle. So I'm going to go to angle A and I'm going to draw a line from angle A to the opposite side, but I want this line to cut the angle in half. So I'm going to draw it right about there because this looks like it's about congruent to that, don't you think? You're just doing a sketch. If we had more time, we'd pull out like compasses and we'd like measure exactly and see exactly what the middle of it is. We truly just don't have time for that. So we're just making our best guess. Now, this right here, I need you to know that that is not the midpoint. This is not a midpoint. It is just a point on the line. It is not a midpoint. So does the angle bisector of a triangle have to bisect the opposite side of the triangle? No, it does not necessarily cut BC into 2 equal pieces. So no, it does not go through a midpoint. The special thing about this is it goes through the vertex, which is one of the angle points, and it makes the angle congruent. So the special things I'm going to write out here, I'm going to say vertex, and I'm going to say angles congruent. Okay, questions yet? All right, next one is perpendicular bisector. which we just reminded ourselves that bisector means that we cut it into two congruent pieces. What does perpendicular mean? Yep, I see this, which is these, what kind of angles are these? Right, which are what degree? 90. So perpendicular means that it's gonna be a 90 degree. It's going to cut the opposite side in half, and it's going to be 90 degrees. Perpendicular means 90, bisector, cut into congruent parts. All right, so it is a line ray segment that is perpendicular to the triangle side at its midpoint. So we're gonna go draw that at AC. So I'm gonna first draw a midpoint. We'll say this is about the midpoint of AC, and I'm gonna show my congruent mark so that I know that it's the midpoint. And then I'm gonna draw a line that is 90 degrees. Is this 90 degrees to AC? No, definitely not, right? I'm gonna draw something like, sometimes it's hard to see it. I think that's pretty close, maybe even if I move it over a little bit. That might be more, 90 degrees, I don't quite know. Again, we're not getting compasses out or anything crazy, no protractors. And I am gonna put at least one, you don't have to do both, but you need at least one 90-degree sign so that you show that you know that it should be 90 degrees. And we use the congruent marks to show that we know that it's congruent. Sometimes I can't really do this on my iPad because it will keep putting it this way. But sometimes when I do this on paper, I physically take my paper and I kind of move it around because sometimes looking at it from a different vantage point makes it easier to draw perpendicular. So just a little heads up. Does the perpendicular bisector of a triangle go through a vertex? Not necessarily. It could. It does not have to. Does not have to. All right. What do you guys think the two special things of this are? What's special about this special segment? 90 degrees. So I'm going to say right angle or 90 degrees. And then what's the other thing that's special? The other thing that's special about this? What is congruent? The angles are congruent. That's not what I'm getting at. What else is special about when I drew this line? What was the first thing we did? A midpoint, good. So right angle and a midpoint. Those are the two things that are special. All right, we've done mid-segment, we've done angle bisector and perpendicular bisector. The last two are probably new words to you. The first one is median. How many of you guys are taking driver's ed or took driver's ed?
Me,
What is a median in the road?
the middle part that divides the two.
Yeah, the middle line, or like whenever there's like that like weird grass or tree in the middle of the road, you're like, what is that doing here? We call that a median too. A median of a triangle is a little different, but I do like to put it with real people words. It has endpoints at the vertex of a triangle and the midpoint on the opposite side. So it cuts the triangle, not necessarily in half, but it goes through the triangle by going through a vertex and a midpoint. So sketch a median to AB on the triangle. So let's find the midpoint of AB. Put your little congruent marks. So I know it's a midpoint. Find C, your vertex, and draw a line between those two.
No, Casey.
It'll be okay, Oscar.
Oscar, it's a tough crowd for you today, isn't it?
The point was like I was messing with her, but like I guess if you turn it on me, I guess I'm a little lost.
You cannot let yourself get messed on my shirt. Wait, stop.
Oh no, don't do that.
I have green
Yes,
moisturizer.
you're
My
Oh,
razor burn.
oh. Is that why your whole upper lip is out? I wasn't gonna say anything, but no, you're fine. Whatever works for you, bud.
I've never been No, Oscar, it's really, I get it.
I don't know what made Catherine think she was like so comfortable, like. with
I was like, I
saying
understand it. No, you have to say moisturize, I get it. But why does your moisturizer have to be vague and I'm not here? You're not here.
All right, let's keep going. I want to get some time for homework.
No, like, I have to say moisturizer.
What?
I like a new backpack.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the backpacks.
I'm making my mom. Just casually.
My favorite is the green like shirts with the like I'm like so excited about those.
I sent her that. I don't. When she asked why she was doing that, I just went last year.
They are different.
I need both. I
You
need
need
both.
both.
You know?
All right, I want to finish these notes because I want to give you time to work on homework. Focus up, focus up, focus up. Okay, tell me, what are the two special things? What are the two special things about a median? It goes through what?
It goes through like two.
Not necessarily. I heard one of them. Tilly, what did you say? Oh, I think you said it. Vertex.
Oh my gosh, that's what I said.
Oh, Macy, you said vertex. Vertex is one of them. What's the other point it goes through? Midpoint. Good. It goes through a vertex and it goes through a midpoint. All right, last one we're gonna do is the altitude. Is that word familiar to you guys? Altitude? In the mountains or like on the plane? Or you ever been on like a flight and they like the pilot gets on, they're like, we are cruising at this many miles altitude. That's like if you took a measuring tape from the plane and literally just dropped it down to the earth. So it goes from the plane straight down. Altitude contains the vertex. So that's like from the plane, the vertex, and is perpendicular to the opposite side. Another way that we could write it, we could say altitude is the height. So like when you were in elementary school, I think we often talk about the height of a triangle. That's the altitude. So it says sketch an altitude to BC in the triangle. So that means we're going to go from point A. And I want to go from the vertex and I want to find wherever the point is that's perpendicular. So like over here, oh no, that's not at all what I wanted. If I look at where this pink line crosses BC, that is not 90 degrees yet. Let's keep moving, let's keep moving. The fun thing about notability is it usually stops you when you're there, but if it doesn't, you can do your best to guess. That is not a midpoint. It's just where it's 90 degrees. I actually don't think that one's the right one. Let me move it a little bit more. I think that's probably a better representation. And I am going to write not midpoint next to this one too, just so I know that it does not have to be a midpoint. Are we focused for the last few minutes of class? Okay. All right, this went through the vertex and it was perpendicular. So what are the two things that I'm going to write next to this? What are the two special things about an altitude?
Vertex.
Good, vertex and 90-degree angle or right angle or perpendicular, however you want to write it. I like to do right angle, but you can say perpendicular or you can say 90 degrees, whatever makes you happy. All right, the reason I made this green key off to the side is when you turn your paper over, I've got a bunch of pictures and we have to decide what special segment is drawn there. So I'm going to kind of ask you what two important things are happening and we're going to use those. Okay, let's flip our paper over. One thing I do want to bring to your attention, none or neither could be an option. There could not be the name of a special segment. It just could be nothing. All right, let's look at this first one. What do you see here? What's special here? We've got a right angle. What else do I have? Midpoint. Which one is a right angle and a midpoint? Perpendicular bisector. Awesome. Perpendicular bisector. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? Okay. What about the next one? What's going on here? What's special here? That one is an angle bisector. Why do you know that?
Because there's cutting through the triangle, let's move it to
You're right there. It makes two what? Congruent what?
angles.
Angles. We see congruent angles and it goes through a vertex. That one, the two things might be more hurtful than they are helpful because I think that you just kind of see that it's an angle bisector. And I'm just gonna abbreviate it with a little angle sign. Angle bisector. Just for sake of time, I'm just moving. All right, what about the next one? What's going on here? Mid segment, why, Rosie? Yes, and what do those congruent segments mean that A and B are? Midpoints. I've got two midpoints. All right, what about the next one? I've got vertex and I have a midpoint. What do we call that? Median, very good.
Can you not rewrite like the what it has?
No, that is an awesome question, Macy. Macy's asking, do we have to write all this stuff that I'm writing in green? You do not. And you're gonna get good enough that you don't even need to necessarily state that. But if you ever struggle, that's what I kind of think of. I'm like, what do I have? I have vertex and midpoint. I'm gonna go to my notes and see where else do I have vertex and midpoint. What about the next one? What's going on there? I do see the right angle. I'm gonna say it's not altitude though, because altitude has to go through what? Does this go through a midpoint? I would say none here. I don't have enough information. If I even had just little congruent marks, yes, I'd say perpendicular bisector, but I can't make something up if I don't know it. I'm gonna say none. All we have is a right angle. That's it.
So the drawing, if you like lines and stuff to show you that it's a midpoint.
Yes. So just like up here, see how those have congruent marks? It will have to be like that.
So it's kind of like last semester where we like couldn't guess it was a midpoint or like whatever it was.
Yep. Or even remember last semester where like it would look like it could be a right angle, but it didn't have the little box. So unless it tells you it's a right angle or it tells you it's a midpoint by the congruent marks, you cannot assume. Good question. All right, what about the next one? What do we think there?
Altitude.
Yep, altitude. It has a right angle, it has a vertex. What about the one next to that?
Perpendicular bisector,
Mhm. Why?
because it has the right angle and it has a
Good, midpoint and right angle. That one's a median. Mhm. You're doing great. Maybe you should just take Tommy out of that seat always, and you just always sit there. Mid-segment, why, Catherine? Good, two midpoints.
Keep forgetting that the top one is one as well.
Uh-huh, don't forget about that one. And what about the last one?
altitude,
Good, why?
because right angle and
Awesome. I've got one more box of examples. I've got a little over 10 minutes. I still think we can have some time for homework, but let's keep working through this. Anybody have any questions yet? Nope, we're good? Okay, now I'm gonna use this figure and I wanna name the following. I wanna name a median of triangle DEF, an altitude of DEF, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look. Okay, first one, DEF is the entire triangle. It's this whole shape. I need to do a median. Does anyone see a median there? DLY.
Right through.
But it goes through a vertex, and then what's the other thing that a median has? Vertex and midpoint, good. Perfect. Let's do an altitude of DEF, or yeah, of triangle DEF. You can go either way. You can say FK or you can say KF. Why did you know? Why did you say K first though, Macy? Why did you know K had to be involved? Good. And altitude is 90-degree angle and what other thing?
Vertex.
Vertex. So F is a vertex. F is one of the corners of the triangle DE and F, and then K is the 90-degree angle. Last one is angle bisector of DEF. I heard it. DE, yeah. Who said that? Yeah, Braden. Speak up, you had it, man. Why do you know that one? At which angle? Angle E, good. So we took one of the vertexes, E is a vertex, and then we split it right in half. So EG is my angle bisector. All right, let's do median of EHF. Let's see, where's EHF? EHF. HL is what, Macy? The median, I agree. It goes through the vertex again, it goes through a midpoint, HL. What about an altitude? In HEK. So now we're looking at the triangle HEK. I heard KH, that works. I can actually see another one. KE works. So when you have a right angle like that, there might be two of the sides are automatically altitudes. And that's kind of what we're looking at for the last, almost the last part. It says altitude what in triangle what. And there's only 3 of these that we haven't done already. So we've already looked at triangle HEK. I'm going to argue there are 3 other triangles that have 2 altitudes. So I think that there's a couple more right triangles we can find here. KEF, that's a big right triangle. What would the altitudes be there? Very good. Yep, we'll just kind of squeeze them both in there. KE and KF. Does anyone see another right triangle? Yeah, Rosie? D what? DKJ is a little bit bitty baby one over here. DKJ, what are my altitudes there? Very good, DK and KJ. And I'm gonna argue there's one more right triangle here. Yeah, Catherine? KE. KEH, we already did KEH up here.
Oh,
Different than that one too. So we did HEK, we did this one. We did not do that one yet. Very good. This long skinny one. Triangle DKF. What are my 2 altitudes? Good. All right, and then the last 2 questions just ask, are there any perpendicular bisectors? Are there any segment bisectors? So perpendicular bisector, what does that need to have? Perpendicular bisector is what 2 things? A right angle and a midpoint. Do we have any perpendicular bisectors? Nope. we can look at one of two things. We can look at our one midpoint and see if there's a perpendicular mark there. It's not. We can go to our perpendicular mark and see if there are midpoint marks there. There are not. So we do not have any perpendicular bisectors. Now, do we have any just regular segment bisectors? Yeah, what counts as a segment bisector? I would not count FK. I think LH works. I actually see one more that works. And there's actually a couple different ways you could name this one.
DL work or D?
So DL works. You could also think of DL as the same thing as JL, which is the same thing as IL. This line right here is a segment bisector because it goes through a midpoint. And just pick two of the points on that line. So I'm gonna say DL.
Like JL and IL.
Yep, because that's the same segment. All right, your homework for tonight. I want you to go to it really quickly just because I do not want you to do one part of it. When you go to the homework, this one is a normal page. Go to the one that says special segments at the top because that's what our notes said. And on the front side, you see that big chart? The last column says name the point of concurrency. Did we talk about that? No. Are you expected to do that? No. So you can just cross that last column out because we are not doing point of concurrency right now. I think everything else you can do, and I want you to do both front and back of that paper. Okay. It's called special segments. I want you to do front and back, two sides like normal. And I'm going to stop